with just an hour to spare, Benjamin Netanyahu manages to form a new Israeli government. But will it stick? And is Netanyahu at the mercy of some of Israel's most right-wing parties? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Jane Dutton. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has avoided what could have been an embarrassing end to his time in office by narrowly securing a coalition government. We say narrowly because he controls just 61 out of the 120 seats in Parliament, which means that his government could be at risk of collapse if just one person in his coalition decides to walk away. But that's not his only worry. This is seen as perhaps the most right-wing government ever formed in Israel, and it could put the country on a collision course with the United States and other allies. Lots to discuss on today's show. But first, Al Jazeera's Mike Hanna gets things started from West Jerusalem.
There's been intense criticism of the new government from the opposition within Israel and Palestinians without. Opposition politicians say that the government is narrow and one rooted in self-interest. The Palestinians have described it as extreme right-wing, composed of people who have no interest whatsoever in seeking a two-state solution. Yet they may take comfort in the fact that the government may not last long. Some analysts contend it is inherently self-destructive. A number of members of the coalition were brought in with a promise of increased government expenditure on their interests. However, another of the coalition partners is headed by a man tapped to be the finance minister who has insisted that he will cut government spending. Clearly, the interests are very divergent. There has been speculation, too, that Benjamin Netanyahu may, within months, if not weeks, invite the leader of the Zionist Union to join the coalition, making it a stronger government. However, Yitzhak Herzog has made clear from the beginning that he has no interest in joining a coalition headed by Benjamin Netanyahu, and is even less likely to join a coalition composed of parties whom he would regard as even more unsavory. Mike Hanna for Inside Story in West Jerusalem.
The new coalition only holds 61 of 120 Knesset seats, giving it the slimmest possible majority. That means the loss of any one party would force the entire coalition to dissolve. Netanyahu's Likud party leads the group with 30 of the parliamentary seats. It's joined by a new centre-right group called Columnist, which focuses on the economy, as well as two ultra-Orthodox parties called United Torah Judaism and Shas, who joined the coalition on the promise of renewed state welfare benefits for the ultra-religious. Jewish Home was the last party to join the coalition, led by Naftali Bennett. It's an extreme right-wing faction that opposes the establishment of a Palestinian state and has pushed for more Israeli settlements in the West Bank. Let's bring in our guests. In Jerusalem, Ilan Baruch, a former Israeli ambassador to South Africa who resigned 4 years ago over political differences with the Israeli government. In Tel Aviv, we have Akiva Eldar, a senior columnist at almonitor.com. And also in Jerusalem, Mitchell Barak, the founder of KEEVOON Global Research, an Israeli-based firm that researches political communication. Good to have you all on the show. I am looking forward to it. Mitchell, Barak, let me start off with you. So Netanyahu has managed in the last hour to scrape through a coalition. Was it worth it?
Well, I think he's probably asking himself that question. I mean, his government was more stable and more manageable the last time. The problem was he had personal differences with some of his ministers, and he thought if he shook it up, he would come out with a better result. I don't think after, 4 or 5 months of doing that, 6 months of doing that, that neither him nor the Likud nor the state of Israel or the citizens of Israel are any better off right now as far as having a manageable government that can face the challenges ahead.
And of course, this took everybody by surprise, wasn't it, when Avigdor Lieberman stepped down? So he didn't have time initially to prepare for this eventuality, did he?
Well, he's not really the best planner when it comes to these things, and he always saves things for the last minute. And, you know, he takes as a given that people are going to join the government and won't have the boldness not to join the government. And in the case of Lieberman, first of all, he's very unpredictable on many issues. But if you look at many of the parties, including Lieberman's party, including Kachlon's party, including Bennett's party, and Tzipi Livni for that matter, most of the people today in Israeli politics that are in leadership position, or many of them that are opposing the Likud, have actually worked with Netanyahu and actually not gotten along with him. So as soon as the possibility comes to maybe punish him, or maybe put him in a tough spot, or maybe challenge him, they may just do that because they have experience with him that is not necessarily good.
Ilan, I mean, that's an interesting point, isn't it? This really has shown that Netanyahu can be easily blackmailed. If any party wants something, they can be putting on excessive demands on him.
Yes, and but I think we need to look at the bright side of it. This government actually offers us an interesting opportunity when it comes to the network of relations of Israel with the world at large. And I think Netanyahu, for his survival, will need to go back to the policy planning room, and that's where the players overseas could actually challenge him with a new set of interests, and which might help get the breakthrough that we didn't get for the last 6 years.
Akiva, I'm wondering what you make of that. Could this save his government? Could this save the country, or could it rather be leading the country into further isolation?
Well, I believe, as I wrote today in our monitor, is that if we had President Sadat plus Jimmy Carter coming to Jerusalem and putting on the table an attractive package along the lines with the Arab Peace Initiative, they may find that Netanyahu doesn't really represent the majority of the Israelis. If you look at the Knesset, it divides right in the middle. You have 61 against 59, and in those 61 members of Knesset who are with the coalition, you can find members of Shas, let alone Kulanu of the Kachlon's new party, who support the two-state solution. So unlike what the mainstream analysts predicted after the elections, is that this government will not bring us to peace. Well, this is true, but the Knesset, which represents the Israeli electorate, the Israeli constituency, is willing to make a deal with the Palestinians and is very concerned about the relationship with the United States and the rest of the international community and what happens next. So this government can also always offer us a good parking lot. But there are many people who are looking for maybe a new car or a nice house, and they would look at the status quo as driving back and putting the car in reverse rather in putting it on drive and looking for a new horizon.
Mitchell, I'm going to pick up on the economic nuance there. The money man, Moshe Kachlon, he wants to slash the budget, and at the same time, there's a call for more money to the religious parties. How's that going to work, and where does that leave the Israeli electorate?
Right. Well, first of all, I would say, if we take a step back, this government, I would call it a budgetary government, meaning this government has one purpose right now, and that's to pass the 2015-2016 budget. That is what's on Netanyahu's mind right now. He has to legally pass the budget, otherwise the Knesset dissolves. We're in a situation where the budget hasn't been passed for this year, and it must legally be passed. That's the first order of business for this Knesset. Once that is done, he can free himself up to really decide who does he want in this government and what's the best government for Israel. Can he bring in someone else? Can he get rid of some parties? Can he bring some in? So that's first of all to consider. Regarding Kahlon, the finance minister, he does want to have certain reforms. Cost of living is very high here. There's new movement to give social welfare, which is not only to the ultra-Orthodox, it's to all citizens with large families. It's to certain health care plans, which is for all citizens. Jews, Arabs, Russians, all Israeli citizens get that, not just the religious. There are certain religious institutions that will get money, but there is going to be a certain burden on the budget now with these parties signing. So the big problem that he's going to have is not just with finding more money, but in the past 30 or so years, the finance minister of Israel has almost always come from the ruling party. Whatever the ruling party is, the finance minister comes from, because that position is basically a political position. It's cutting budgets, it's being able to political maneuver, and having the full backing of the prime minister. The only finance minister that hasn't been like that has been Yair Lapid, and we saw what happened to him. So that's going to be his biggest challenge, is to work with Netanyahu and to try and make those reforms, those structural reforms, which will make housing cheaper, which will make cost of living, food, and other items cheaper for the Israeli public.
I want to pick up something that Akiva said about this
May I jump in?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to remind you that Kahlon was born in the Likud, so there is a big difference between him and Lapid, who came from a different area, a different arena, and Kahlon is a natural member of the Likud, and he doesn't see the entire picture differently than Netanyahu and the Likud.
All right, I want to pick up on something that you mentioned a little bit earlier.
Let me just say one thing. That's correct. That's correct. I worked for Dan Meridor when he was finance minister, and he was from the Likud, and he resigned simply because Netanyahu stopped supporting his policies. So as soon as the prime minister wants to drop the finance minister, he can very easily do it by either approving budgets, by cutting budgets, by doing things behind his back. So it's a position that has to have the full trust and backing of the prime minister. And I'm not sure Kahlon, who's been burned by Netanyahu and who actually left politics because he didn't feel that Netanyahu was the right leader for the Likud, is going to have some difficulty.
All right, and let's talk about somebody who might also have some difficulty, and it was a point brought up about how the Palestinians are going to be dealt with. As the deadline for the coalition government loomed, the Jewish Home Party was able to use its leverage to secure some favourable promises from Prime Minister Netanyahu. One of those was the appointment of Ayelet Shaked as Justice Minister. Now, she's a member of the Knesset who is known for her ultra-nationalistic views. Shaked posted on Facebook last July, "What's so horrifying about understanding that the entire Palestinian people is their enemy? They are all enemy combatants, and their blood shall be on all their heads." Now, this also includes the mothers of the martyrs who send them to hell with flowers and kisses. They should go, as should the physical homes in which they raised the snakes. Ilan, with her in a powerful position, where's this going to leave the Palestinian cause, the two-state solution?
Well, we are now in an entirely new phase in the history of relations between Palestinians and Israelis. The bells of history are now here ringing, and this is the culmination of a right wing that has surpassed its excellence in explicitly expressing its views. And I think that without an international change of gear, we are going to see a clash here, and we need to act very swiftly in order to change the paradigm of policy between us and the Palestinians with the intervention of
but how do you change this policy
overseas?
If you've got these right-wing parties, these parties who don't believe in a two-state solution, who want an increase, a dramatic increase in settlements?
Yes, this is squarely simple. If you look at the policy planning, Netanyahu wants to survive as prime minister, and for that he needs the world. And the world needs to put on the drawing board in the policy planning room all the assets that can ensure the continuity of his premiership or deny him the assets. And everything that Israel entertained so far unconditionally with its policy towards the Palestinians needs to be now looked at and examined and conditioned with the world interest in allowing the Palestinians to come up with their own state alongside Israel and develop a relationship between Israel and Palestine that is of a neighborhood rather than occupation.
Now, Palestinian reaction to the new Israeli government was swift, as you can imagine. Here's the Palestinian president's spokesman, Nabil Abu Reidana.
This is a rightist government which believes in settlement activity, rejects the two-state solution, and still pushes through long-term political paralysis. This will reflect on the region and will be dangerous, not only for the Palestinian issue, but for the general political atmosphere in the region.
Mitchell, does this annihilate any possibility of peace talks, a peace process with the Palestinians now?
No, I don't think so. Again, we had seen over the past few months during the election campaign that the volumes were really rising, and the talk against the Palestinians was pretty damaging kind of messaging from both sides, and a lot of that has died down. You know, once the government is formed, again, I'll agree with Ilan that the government now has to see how are they going to face the world, because the world is going to have to accept the Israeli government. There has to be relations with countries, and countries in Europe, in the United States, and elsewhere want to know what Israel is going to do for the peace process. With this government, there's going to be a lot of difficulty, just like there is with any kind of peace process, because you need to have the numbers of support. Either they come from your side or the other side. I think we have to, again, look at this in compartments. The government right now is going to pass a budget, and then after that, Netanyahu, his challenge is not only what's going to be good for Israel, he's thinking about his legacy right now. He's been prime minister now straight for 6 years, almost 9 years in total. By the end of this term, he will be the longest serving prime minister in Israel, the longest prime minister serving in Israel. He has to decide whether he wants to be in the Guinness Book of Records or in the history book. And in order to get in the history books, he's going to have to find some type of settlement, some type of solution for the Israelis to live together side by side with the Palestinians, and for there be some type of comprehensive peace solution. In order to do that, he's going to need different partners in his government, and he's going to have to make some tough decisions about what lies ahead for Israel.
Also, part of his legacy at this stage, certainly, Akiva, is the lowest point of relations with the US. We haven't seen this for a long time between the Israelis and the US. And I know he has problems with Barack Obama. But any chance that this is going to get better at any time soon, looking at the new coalition?
Jane, as you mentioned before, you quoted Ayelet Shaked saying that the Palestinians are enemies. I think that Netanyahu would say that Obama is an enemy as well. And maybe he is the #1 enemy, because vis-a-vis the Arabs, he believes that he has the upper hand. And his approach to the Arabs, to the Palestinian, is very similar to the way he conducted the coalition agreements. It's a zero-sum game. It's declaring victory, scoring points, especially in the media, and then, of course, declaring victory. So vis-a-vis Obama, you know, surprisingly, he was trying to do the same thing, to declare victory against the President of the United States, the leader of the free world. And he has played Congress against the President. He's playing the American media against the President. And now, of course, he's also playing the casino with Sheldon Adelson against the Democrats. So what he needs is another year or so before the Americans will enter the election year, and they will be very busy with domestic politics and with listening very carefully to AIPAC, to the pro-Israeli lobby. And it all depends now on what Obama is going to do once the French will submit their resolution to the Security Council, whether Obama will say to Netanyahu, enough is enough. You can't play up your weakness to ask me to, again, to tailor the American policy to fit your measures, the measures of your coalition. You can't tell me, you know, please have mercy, I have only 61 majority. It won't, if this works again, if Obama will keep listening to his political advisors and not to the experts on Middle East who will tell him, if you want to isolate ISIS, and if you want to have some control in Yemen and help your partners in the Middle East, you have to change your policy dramatically.
Okay, let me put that to Ilan, because I mean, Israel is not seen as an active player in bringing peace to the region, is it? I mean, Israel's policies towards the Palestinian is seen as a major factor in violence and instability in parts of the Middle East. Netanyahu's relations with Obama are at an all-time low. His relations with Europe are not great. We're seeing elections in the UK. Who do you think is going to be the better winner for him, and what can he do to turn around relations with Europe?
Well, he will, Netanyahu obviously is in his personality the combination, the blend of a deeply committed ideologue of the far right, expansionist of Israeli rule over the territory of the land of Israel, as the nationalists see it, and at the same time, he is a very shrewd survivor of the political game. And I think this gives the international community a very important and precious opportunity to negotiate with him, only from a different angle. So far, Israel entertained a very soft hand coming from Europe and the United States and the Arab League. And I think we need to see a lot more tough, assertive messaging coming from the world, but also allowing Israel under Netanyahu a place in the fold, provided it goes along with international perception of what is wrong and what is right, and allowing the creation of the state of Palestine alongside Israel, end of occupation, and transformation of the relations between Palestinians and Israelis from occupation to neighborhood. And it's possible.
Mitchell, I'm just wondering if the opportunity for military action against Iran now has closed, or is this something that'll be revisited?
No, I mean, look, I'm not privy to these internal discussions with the Israeli military and government, but I think that Netanyahu campaigned, his main campaign message was that there's an existential threat against the state of Israel by a nuclear Iran. Iran still seems to be trying to achieve nuclear capability. And if they do that, Israel is threatened, and Israel reserves the right to defend itself. I mean, I think there are also, the interesting point here is I think there are also other countries in the region, like Saudi Arabia, like some of the other Gulf states, that also feel very, very threatened by a nuclear Iran. And that makes for some interesting bedfellows, if you will, and some interesting alliances within the Middle East. So I think that, we're seeing that, Israel has contact, Israel has relations with other countries, and, ISIS was mentioned, and what's going on in Yemen was mentioned, what's going on in Syria. It's not good for the Middle East neighborhood, and I think there are a lot of countries here in the region, of which Israel is really the only democracy, that would like to see stability in the region. And they may work together towards that, whether it's with the U.S., whether it's with the European Union, but there is interest for stability. And again, Israel would reserve the right to defend itself against a nuclear Iran, but it would have to be at the support of other countries being involved.
And of course, if the coalition holds, with those final words, Michel, Barak, thank you for talking to us from Jerusalem. Akiva, Eldar in Tel Aviv, and Ilan Baruch also in Jerusalem. Thank you, gentlemen. And thank you, of course, for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. We'd love to hear your thoughts. You can get in touch with us on our program page at aljazeera.com. You can also post your comments at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, or tweet us at AJ Inside Story or at Jane Dutton. From me and the rest of the team, goodbye for now.